Hey there, I'm Gabby and I'm a wet and wet oil painter. And today I want to do a little work on fences. So I'm going to show you guys how to make fences, but more importantly I'm going to show you how to practice making fences without using oil paint and without using up canvas, so that when you are ready to use oil paint and canvas, you'll be ready to go. So let's get started. So what I have is, first I have some very simple cheap acrylic paint, and I have cornstarch. I also have a plate, and I have a liner brush and a flat brush. So, oh, and I don't know if I said this, I have knives too. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix these two things together, and we're going to create a paint that is very oil paint like without being oil paint for practice. So give me just a minute and I'll get those mixed. Alright, so I have it mixed. As you can see on this plate, I have just acrylic paint, that's some of that cornstarch, and then this is the mixed stuff, so it's thick like oil paint now. The one caveat to this is it does dry faster than oil paint, so you want to mix this up right before you're ready to do this. You can also practice this with like really cheap cake frosting, but I think this is probably a better way to do it. Alright, so the first fences we're going to do are going to be with knives, since we have this little concoction together. So I'm going to, just like I was doing with, if I were to do this with oil paint, I'm going to get a little bit of a roll on the back of my knife. Maybe not that big of a roll. Okay? And I'm going to start with making fence posts. Now what I'm working with here is just a piece of paper, and I zoomed you guys in so you could see it better. So you're going to take your knife, and I'm going to make these fence posts a little bit bigger than I probably normally would. Okay? And all you do is you drag your knife across the canvas. So we'll make a bunch of fence posts. Now fence posts are almost always never very perfect. And we're going to start just with making a straight fence, and then we're going to make some different stuff in between these fence posts. Okay, so there we have very, very simple way to make fence posts. Now, if you want them to look cleaner, once you've done from one side, you can go back from the other side, and you can sort of fill them in. Okay? Now, you can make these fence posts 3D before you do the cross beams or after. If I were going to make this 3D, I would fill in that other part with another color. But you can also just leave it blank and let the color that's already on your picture fill in that fence post. Very simple. Okay? Now we're going to make the cross beams. So instead of doing sideways, you're going to go up and down. And the best way to sort of do this is to not overlap the black of the vertical fence post, because fence posts usually are sort of in between. Okay? And I know it's not the prettiest fence in the world, but we're not going for beauty today, so that doesn't really matter. Now, to make these 3D as well, you can sort of do the same thing. And you can do it with a liner brush too, and I'll show you that as well. So sometimes when I make fences, it's sort of a combination of knife work and brush work. See if I can make this a little bit more noticeable on that one. There you go. And voila, we have a fence. So, very simple how you make fences. And again, it's just flat and just sliding little slides. And make sure you have enough paint. If you don't have enough paint, it won't come off. If it gets really globby, then you know you have too much. Okay? So, now that we have some fence posts, I'm going to take some acrylic paint. And I'm going to take my liner brush, and I'm just going to roll it. I'm just keeping it in the cap because I don't need to have it spread all over the place because it's a bit runny. So we're going to take our liner brush and sort of that same concept that we were doing with the cross beams. We'll do another cross beam here. Okay. So instead of using your knife to do that upper part, you can use a brush as well. Pretty simple. And it's just putting it on there and just dragging it across. The trick with this is you got to make sure that your paint is wet enough. Now we're going to move on to another sort of style of fence. So we're going to leave these posts here. And again, to create these shadows, you can use a liner brush as well. And you can always fill this stuff in, you know, with a different color if you want as well. Sometimes they'll make it kind of sketchy. Okay. So we'll put a line between. Now if I'm doing a fence that has like wire lining on it, I'll usually go the whole way across. Now you could do it with 2 of those wires. Something that I like to do is make sort of these cattle guard fences. Now when I do this with oil painting, the paint is thinner and the lines aren't so chunky, but it helps to make it big so you guys can see it. So this top piece, I'm going to make it barbed wire. Now you can do just little lines like that if you want. I actually find that if you do sort of like a little X, that gives it a very barbed wire sort of look. So very simple. Fill this in. Now, let's say you don't want to use a knife, and you don't always have to use a knife. You can take a flat brush. Now to do this practice, I'm not adding cornstarch to this, I'm just using my brush, okay? So, a little more control with a brush, okay? Now I'm going to do something a little bit different with this fence while we're working on this. So bear with me. I have a nice tall fence post. Now, one of the best things about fences, besides adding some sort of interesting detail, is they are great for creating sort of spatial depth in your picture. So this fence post, make it a little bit wider. There we go. The front fence post is going to be the widest, the tallest, and there will be the biggest gap here. The next one, a little bit shorter, a little bit skinnier, and then this gap is a little bit closer than this gap. And so on and so forth. As you go down, you make them shorter, right? So that it's sort of a V shape. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go so drastic, but if you want to look like you're really looking down the fence line, that's a really good way to do it. And again, you can then create depth with it. Okay? And then I will do a little bit of this with a liner brush. So if I want to connect these, I can just slide up. You can also do that sort of connection with a knife where it's just little taps. And then as you come forward, this line will become thicker, like this direction, but you'll see that it V's out like that as well. And just like that, we have a fence that is very in-depth. So I'm going to show you something really quick. What I like to do with these is, let's pretend this is like white and this is like snow. I'll slide snow sort of in between these. And then sometimes I'll do it down on the other side too. If you know where your fence is going to be, you can kind of lay down, you know, color first. And you can do this with grasses, you can do it with snows, you can do it with whatever. And then one side will be, you know, like shaded, and then the other side won't be. And if you're having like a sunset, always remember where your light's coming from, and then put shadows accordingly. So flat brush. And then again, we can make barbed wire. We can do all sorts of stuff. So that is a fence. That is really all there is to it. And this is just regular old printer paper. It's nothing special. Now, if you practice your fences, you know, even just a little bit, it won't take long before you'll be good at it. And then when you hit your canvas, you'll really, really be thankful that you practiced first. And if you've painted fences before, but you're not good at it, practice. I mean, sometimes even if you are good at something, practicing is a good way to test out new ideas. Okay, so the last sort of fence I want to talk about would be like a sand fence. And they have these snow fences too, but sand fences are sort of funner. So sand fences, they're really skinny. And they're really close together. And they also seem to always be sort of tipping over, so I always make mine tip. Oh, there's too much space in between there. Okay? But they're very narrow slats of wood with very narrow gaps in between. And then we'll bring this. Okay. Very simple. So it's that same motion with your knife, it's just much more narrow spots. There we go, there's my liner brush. Okay, so these are always held together with sort of this wiry stuff. And you could do like where you make sort of weavy marks. I just bring it right across. And if I want that to look like it's further away, I would spread that out. Very simple. And you can do this with a liner brush too. If you want it to make it look like it's sort of falling forward in one part, you can kind of bring it down and then bring it back up, and then bring it down and bring it back up. And then these fence posts in the middle, they will sort of be at an angle. And then it makes it look like it's sort of tipped. So that's it. That's all I have for fences. Regular acrylic paint, cornstarch, and then paper, and just practice, practice, practice. And then once you feel like you've really gotten it, then hit your canvas. What I didn't really mention, there are other fences too, like they have them out west in the United States where they're like sort of like an X, and then there's like a pole that runs in between them. So if you want to do fences like that, I guess the general point of this is practice them on paper first and then go to doing it on your canvas. Anyway, that's it. I am Gabby. Any questions, comments, concerns? If you could put them in the comment section, I'll do my best to answer them. If you could like, share, subscribe, that would be wonderful. And until next time, happy painting!